Hello, everybody. My name is Jacob. I'm recording this on March 17th from Chicago, which has started to take the coronavirus pretty seriously for the past few days. And I wanted to share with you this simple model of how a virus or any infectious disease can spread, and hopefully will help you better understand the situation that we're in, and also hopefully help you understand how decision makers are using models to help them make decisions during these tough times. Okay, so over here I've got this population slider. I'm going to set it at 1,000. And when I click setup, 1,000 people are created in this model, represented as these little gray people. And they start off in these brown squares, which represent their homes. And then this black area in the middle represents public space. And the reason I only have 1,000 versus some much bigger number that would be more realistic for the population of a city or something like that is this model is just to look at the patterns of how the number of people infected changes based on how much distancing we're doing. And to get the patterns right, you only need a fairly small number of people. If you were going to make a model that's trying to be very accurate to the real world, then you would need to have a different, either a lot more people or a different type of model. But this model is just intended to show the patterns of what can happen under different scenarios, but not show the exact number of people necessarily. Okay, so next we have the initial number of infected people set to 3 right now, and they're represented in orange. So you see one here, and one down here. Then we have the infection chance. It's set to 10% right now. So that's the chance each amount of time that the model runs in steps. That's the chance that an infected person, if they're on the same square as a susceptible person, it's the chance that they infect that person. So you can think of this as, if you're in the same home as someone, or if you go out in public and you're in the same room as somebody who's infected, what's the chance that they would give you the infection? Then we have the average recovery time. So each person in this model has a recovery time, which is how long it takes them to recover from the virus. You can think of this as maybe days, but don't take that too literally, because again, this model is just meant to show the patterns. The numbers aren't super accurate. But that's the average. So there are some people who will recover more quickly, some who will take longer to recover. And then finally, we have the percentage of distancing. So this is the amount of time that people are going to spend at home compared to going out and being in public. So I'm going to go ahead and start that at 0. I'm going to click setup again. And when I click go, you'll see everybody go into the public space because nobody is distancing right now. And then you'll see a curve over here, which will be the percentage of infected people over time. Okay, so here we go. Everybody's in the public space. You see the number of orange people increasing very quickly, and you see this curve of infected people increases faster and faster before it finally starts decreasing. And that's because you see these green people now. That stands for people that have recovered and are now immune. We're really hoping that is the case, that once people recover from this, they are immune. We think it is the case. And so we see here this curve. You've probably been seeing some curves that look like this. Our max infected percentage was about 57% were infected at the peak. And that happened at time equals 41. I'm going to go ahead and run that one more time, because there's some, as with many models, there's some inherent randomness in this model based on where the infected people start out. If they all start out in the same place, then it might spread more slowly because they're all just infecting the same people at the beginning compared if they're more spread out. But that one was almost exactly the same. I've been seeing more variation than that, so I'm going to go ahead and run it one more time. I'll speed it up a bit. Yeah, so that one looks a bit different. Pretty similar, but again, there is always some, in this model, there's always some randomness, and then with most models, there can be uncertainty within the model itself like this. And then also, every model chooses to model some things, but there's some things that are left out. The real world is much more complicated, and that's something that decision makers have to face when they're using models, that they can be a guide for making decisions, but they can't tell you exactly what's going to happen. Okay, let's go ahead and move this distancing up to 25%. So now you'll see 25% of people staying at home at all times. And the way this works in this model is just each person, each time step, decides whether to go into public or stay at home, and right now they'll have a 25% chance of staying at home. I know that's not the most accurate. Probably it's more likely that some people are pretty much fully staying at home and some people are just going out in public, but for a simple model, that should be good enough. Okay, so here's our first curve. I'm going to run it again. Looks like compared to our first two runs, it's a little bit better than with zero social distancing, but not that much. Peak is a little bit later, a little bit lower. Not a huge difference. Okay, let's go ahead and go to 50% distancing, social distancing. And really I should be saying physical distancing. That's the term I prefer. I saw some people tweet that, we don't want to be socially distant. We want to stay socially close with people. We just want to be physically distant to not pass on the virus. So I've taken that advice. I've had some nice social interactions with friends and family over the phone and Zoom and stuff. So hopefully you can do that as well. Okay, so here's our 50% distancing curve. I'll run that one more time as well. Here we're starting to see considerable flattening. So when you hear people talking about flattening the curve, this is what they're talking about. The peak is both lower and happens at a later time than our 0 and 25% cases. And even though a similar number of people get infected by the end, this can be really important because our medical system, our hospitals, don't have capacity to deal with this if everybody gets infected at once. And so we're trying to flatten the curve to give them some breathing room so that they'll have the capacity to deal with, help the people that are going to be most severely affected by this virus. Okay, let's go ahead and go to 60%. Speed this up a bit more. And now we're starting to get a much flatter curve. This light blue line, a lot flatter, and at this point also fewer people are getting the virus overall. We have a full 40% that remained uninfected. And now when we go ahead and go to 70%, and now we're getting to numbers that this amount of social distancing is not going to happen probably without government intervention. And I'll talk more about that in a second. So now with 70%, almost nobody got it. 98.4% of people remain uninfected. We're talking about this little pink line down here, basically flat. I'll go ahead and run that again. So again, with this amount of social distancing is unlikely to happen without government measures, but we are starting to see that already in the United States. It's of course already been happening in other countries. Yesterday, the San Francisco Bay Area was told that they are going to be doing what's called a shelter in place. It's basically a lockdown. It's not technically a lockdown because under a lockdown you need government permission to leave your home. In this case, people are allowed to make that choice themselves, I believe. But people are being told to stay at home except for real necessities like going to get food or medical care. And we might start seeing other decisions like that in this country in the coming days. So hopefully this model helps you understand the situation we're in, how flattening the curve happens, and also hopefully helps you understand why some politicians and leaders are making the tough decisions they are to do things like shelter in place or lockdown. And if you're not in a place that has a lockdown type measures, I hope this also helps show why it's so important for us to be physically distancing right now. We know that this virus, you can be spreading it when you have no symptoms or only mild symptoms. So for your own health, you should be physically distancing, and also for everybody else's health, if you got this and kept going out, you could be spreading it to other people before you even know that you have it. Okay, that's it for now. Again, there's a link below if you want to play more with this model yourself. We probably have some pretty tough times ahead of us in the months ahead, but we will make it through this. And in the meantime, keep your physical distance, stay healthy, and be well.